Welcome back to The Explainer, everyone. Today we are unpacking a massive tech revolution that is basically completely rewriting the rules of privacy and human connection. We're going to decode the fascinating and honestly kind of startling world of how machines are learning to literally read our emotions. Okay, let's dive right into this.
So ask yourself this. Do your feelings belong to you alone? Like, really think about it for a second. For millennia, right, we've all operated under this one massive assumption that the human skull is basically the ultimate impenetrable bunker. Your frustration in traffic, your unspoken fears, your deepest joys, all of it just stayed safely locked inside your head unless you actually chose to let it out. But what we're looking at today, that boundary, that invisible wall between your internal world and the outside observer is completely crumbling.
And that brings us to the core of today's explainer, effective computing. Now, let's be super clear here. We aren't talking about some faraway sci-fi movie concept. This is reality, and it's happening right now. We're talking about live, highly active systems designed to constantly analyze your gestures, the subtle pitch of your voice, and those tiny micro-expressions flashing across your face in literally a fraction of a second. The goal? To decode exactly what you're feeling in real time. In a lot of cases, these systems actually know what you're feeling before you consciously realize it yourself. Wild, right?
Now, what's really interesting here is the number 30. That is how many frames per second a standard everyday webcam captures. And remarkably, that is all the system needs to completely ruin your poker face. With just those 30 frames a second, the tech can pick up on incredibly subtle skin color changes caused by the blood flowing just beneath the surface of your face. It's a process called remote photoplethysmography. From there, artificial intelligence, which, let's face it, is an absolute master at pattern recognition, takes the wheel. If your eyebrows twitch just, say, 2 millimeters, and your heart rate spikes by 5%, the AI maps that exact reaction against millions of historical data points to quantify your precise emotional state.
So to really grasp how this works, we need to break down the anatomy of an affective algorithm. The software is basically creating a rear view mirror straight into your mind using 3 distinct channels. First up, computer vision. We just touched on this. It's the system locking on to those fleeting microexpressions. Step 2 is acoustic analysis. This is the software listening for those completely imperceptible tremors or tiny pitch shifts in your voice that totally give away your anxiety or excitement. And step 3 is peripheral biometrics. Think of your modern smartwatches tracking sweat on your skin or how dilated your pupils are. When you weave all 3 of these data streams together, you get this incredibly vivid, real-time snapshot of a person's visceral state.
And this brilliantly illustrates exactly how this tech plays out in the real world. Let's look at a live lab demo. They had a volunteer look at different images while a depth camera tracked their face. When a puppy pops up, the system registers 12% happiness, 0 disgust, but 90% commercial interest. A car crash, 0 happiness, 85% disgust, 0 commercial interest. But then they show a stack of cash, boom, 80% happiness and a whopping 95% commercial interest. Turns out, purely commercially speaking, we love cold hard cash a lot more than cute puppies. But jokes aside, what we're seeing is cold algorithms completely quantifying our complex, messy, very human feelings to fuel what experts are calling behavioral capitalism, which naturally leads us into the booming market of artificial empathy. Think about old school neuromarketing, right? The classic focus group. People sit in a bland room, watch a commercial, and then, well, they lie. They lie to be polite or because they're shy or honestly because they just want the $50 so they can go home. Now contrast that with affective neuromarketing. You show an audience a movie trailer and an AI tracks their faces through a webcam, with their consent, of course. But the thing is, the face doesn't lie. If the audience's emotional engagement tanks right at the 2-minute mark, the studio doesn't need to guess why. They just go back and re-edit the film. Emotion itself has literally become the ultimate metric.
But, any tool this powerful has a dual edge, and our sources highlight a very real, very serious ethical dilemma here. On one side of the coin, the safety benefits are absolutely undeniable. Imagine a rideshare driver cruising down a dark highway late at night. A dashcam monitors their posture. If they subtly yawn or their eyes start to drift, the system instantly pings an alert, catching driver fatigue or maybe even road rage long before a fatal accident happens. I mean, it literally saves lives. But flip that coin, and we dive straight into the massive risk of invasive surveillance. That exact same tech is already being piloted at border checkpoints to flag quote-unquote guilt or nervousness. But what if you're just a naturally anxious traveler who hates flying? Suddenly, a rigid system falsely flags you as a major threat.
And this is where we cross a very, very perilous threshold. We're moving from a world where tech just sells us shoes or keeps our cars in the right lane,
right into the hands of state surveillance and social control. Just look at where this is heading. We're talking about automated job interviews where an AI secretly decides if you look loyal or emotionally unstable. We have border checkpoints assessing your internal state of mind. And perhaps most chillingly, we're seeing experimental classrooms where cameras are physically mounted to the walls to track exactly how attentive or bored a student is at any given second. Let me pull a specific example from the source material that really grounds this whole concept. Imagine a kid sitting in one of those experimental classrooms. They're dealing with some intense grief at home. Maybe they just lost a beloved family member. So naturally, their mind wanders. They stare off into space during a math lesson. But instead of a human teacher noticing something's off, pulling them aside and offering a little compassion, the cold camera system just logs their microexpressions and formally flags them for emotional underperformance. It basically engineers a society where you are required to look productively happy and compliant 24/7. Emotional dissent becomes, practically speaking, strictly forbidden.
So, knowing all of this, a very natural question pops up, right? Can we cheat the machine? If the algorithm is literally always watching, can we somehow trick it? Well, people are definitely trying. There is this whole fascinating movement of visual hacks right now. People are wearing these wild, asymmetrical makeup patterns or highly geometric glasses that are specifically designed to scramble and confuse the anchor points of facial detection algorithms. They've even brought professional, highly trained method actors into labs just to see if they can fake genuine joy well enough to fool the software.
But here's the catch. The AI is notoriously incredibly hard to beat. You see, mainstream psychology has leaned heavily on Paul Ekman's theory for years. That's the idea that humans share these universal emotions expressed exactly the same way across all cultures. And the AI? It is rigidly trained on those exact archetypes. So when our professional method actor tries to pull off a fake smile, the software instantly triggers a warning. Why? Because while the actor remembered to pull back the corners of their mouth, they totally failed to unconsciously flex the orbicularis oculi. That's that tiny, specific muscle right around your eye that only engages when you're experiencing genuine, authentic happiness. The machine basically yells cut, seeing right through the entire performance. So the crucial point is exactly what one cognitive psychologist in our research highlighted. Current affective computing suffers from a massive, fundamental flaw. It completely confuses an outward physical expression with an actual internal feeling. Think about it. You might naturally scowl because you're deep in thought trying to solve a complex problem, not because you're furious. Or maybe you smile out of sheer terrified awkwardness. Because the AI is trained on these rigid, standardized boxes, it constantly misinterprets that human nuance. And by relying on it blindly, we seriously risk automating prejudice on a massive global scale. Ultimately, the real issue here isn't just about whether a camera can read our faces. The bigger question is what happens to us as a society when we literally outsource our empathy to silicon processors. If we just step back and allow a machine learning algorithm to act as the ultimate judge of who is sad, who is dangerous, or who is supposedly deserving of a job, all based on a 2mm twitch of a facial muscle, we are completely flattening the very complexity that makes us human in the first place. Your feelings really are the final fortress of your personal freedom. We have to stop and ask ourselves if we're actually willing to let a machine dictate how we ought to feel or how our deepest feelings are interpreted by the rest of the world. So, I'm going to leave you with this final thought. The next time you sit down, open your laptop, or just glance down at your phone screen, take a second to remember exactly who is watching whom. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep questioning everything, and I'll see you next time.